I moved to Halifax to forget them. I moved there to finally breathe. My ex-wife Margaret married her new man 11 days after our divorce was finalized. She called him a self-made success story. My own daughter stood at their engagement dinner and told the table that her stepfather was the first man who understood what real ambition looked like. They figured I was done. A retired pipe fitter living off CPP and a small workplace pension, good for nothing but fixing the eavesdrow when it leaked. They were wrong about that. At the wedding reception, one of the guests stood up with a glass of champagne in his hand and said a single sentence that made Margaret's face go white as a Nova Scotia February. And at 2:15 in the morning, my phone rang. But before I get into how that call went, you need to understand how we got there. My name is Walter. No, that's not it either. People call me Mac. Everyone's called me Mac since I was 19 years old working the gas lines outside Sydney. I'm 68. I spent 41 years as a pipe fitter, then a foreman. Then I ran my own small contracting outfit out of a rented unit behind a Canadian Tire in Dartmouth. I put gas lines into half the new builds in this province at one point or another. If you've ever felt like you spent your whole life building something for people who only ever asked what you could give them next, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city you're listening from tonight. I read every single one. The parking lot outside the law office was slick with March slush when it happened. I was holding the keys to my truck, not even a fancy truck, just a 2019 Ford F-150, paid off in cash, the one thing I'd kept nice for myself in 39 years of marriage, and a hand with manicured nails, the color of dried blood, reached out and plucked the keys right out of my fingers. Don't make a scene, Walter. That's what she called me, even though everyone else called me Mac. She liked using my legal name when she wanted to remind me I was smaller than her. The judge gave me the truck. It's listed with the house in the settlement, and 60% of the RRSPs. You don't need a truck like this to drive to Tim Hortons, or wherever it is you spend your mornings now. I stood there with my hands still hanging in the air like an idiot. It wasn't about the truck. 39 years, and it had never once been about the truck. Margaret, I said, keeping my voice level, the way you talk to a customer who's about to do something expensive and stupid. I rebuilt that transmission myself. I know that engine better than I know my own knees. She laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. That's the whole problem with you, Walter. You love getting your hands dirty. Roland doesn't fix things. Roland buys the company that makes the thing. That's the difference between a laborer and a man with vision. Roland. The name sat in my mouth like a mouthful of cold coffee. The man she'd been seeing for 8 months while I was still doing her oil changes and shoveling her side of the driveway because my knees were bad, but I still did it anyway, out of habit, out of 40 years of habit. I took a breath. I'm not a man who blows up. 40 years pressurizing gas lines teaches you that anything under enough pressure either holds or it ruptures, and ruptures kill people. I wasn't going to rupture in a law office parking lot. Enjoy the drive, I said. Check the tire pressure before the highway. The front left's been low. She rolled her eyes and reached into her purse, a purse that cost more than my first car, and pulled out a small plastic card. She flicked it at my chest. It bounced off my parka and landed in a puddle of gray slush. I didn't want you stranded, she said, smiling like she'd done me a favor. $20 on a bus pass should get you wherever it is you're staying these days. Consider it a parting gift. I looked down at that card sitting in the slush. 39 years of marriage. I'd raised her daughter like my own from the time she was 6. I'd paid for 2 kitchen renovations, 4 vacations to Cuba, and a hip replacement out of pocket because the wait list was 18 months and she didn't want to wait. And I was worth a $20 bus pass floating in a puddle outside a Halifax law office. I bent down to pick it up. My knees cracked loud enough that a lawyer walking past glanced over. As I straightened up, wiping the slush off the card with my glove, a shadow came over me. It was Betrayal, my stepdaughter. 26 years old, wearing a coat that cost more than my first month's rent in this city, holding a box of Margaret's things to load into the trunk of my own truck. Betrayal, I said, and something in my chest lifted a little, the way it always did when I saw her even now. I'm glad you're here. Maybe we could grab a coffee. I want to talk about what's next. She didn't look at me. She looked at her boots. I can't, Mac. Roland's taking us to that new steakhouse on Spring Garden. We're celebrating, I repeated, and felt something crack a little in my chest. Celebrating the end of your mother's marriage? She finally looked up, and what I saw there hurt more than the divorce papers ever did. Pity mixed in with something close to contempt. Let's be honest, Mac, she said, and her voice had a new confidence in it, borrowed confidence, the kind people put on like a coat that isn't theirs. You worked hard, nobody's saying you didn't, but the world's different now. You can't save your way into anything anymore. Roland's going to show me about leverage, about real estate, about actually building wealth instead of just clocking hours. She glanced at her mother, who was already in the driver's seat of my truck, gunning the engine like she had somewhere urgent to be. "You're a good man, Mac," Brielle said, twisting the knife with that gentle voice people use when they think they're being kind. "But you're small time. Roland's a serious man. He can open doors for me that you never could. You should be happy for Mom. She finally got the version of life she always wanted." "Version of life," I said quietly. "My stepdaughter just called another man an upgrade over the one who taught her to drive on an empty church parking lot in February, who sat in emergency rooms with her twice, who paid for her business diploma out of an account she never knew the balance of." The horn went off. "Brielle, let's go," Margaret called from the driver's seat. "Don't waste your breath on him. He thinks rich means having no debt." Brielle gave me a quick nod, already walking away. "Take care of yourself, Mac. Maybe get a hobby or something." She climbed into the passenger seat of my own truck and didn't look back once. I stood there in the slush holding a $20 bus pass and a duffel bag, watching my own vehicle pull out of the lot with two women in it who used to call me family. Most men would have gone and found a bar. I am not most men. I spent 4 decades working with pressure, knowing that when a system fails, you don't grieve it standing in the wreckage. You isolate the fault, you shut the valve, you start again from a clean line. I walked to the bus stop and sat down. The bench was cold through my coat. I took out my phone. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I scrolled to my financial advisor, a careful man named Desmond I'd worked with for 19 years. He answered on the second ring. "Mac, everything all right at the lawyers?" "Sell it," I said. My voice came out flat. "Sell what? The investments?" "All of it. The TFSA, the non-registered account, the rental property in Bedford, the equipment I've still got sitting storage from the old company. Liquidate everything that isn't already cash. Today." Silence on the line. "Mac, that's a significant move. The market's not great this week. You'll take a hit on some of it." "I don't care," I said, watching a Halifax transit bus groan toward the stop, exhaust pluming in the cold air. "Liquidate it and wire it to the account we set up in February. The one in Portugal. You're going somewhere?" "Tonight," I said, stepping onto the bus, tapping the slush-stained pass against the reader. It beeped green. I walked to the back and sat down, watching the city I'd wired half the houses in slide past the window. They thought they'd stripped me down to nothing. What they didn't know was that 18 months ago, a small piece of valve technology I'd patented with an engineer buddy from my old company had been picked up by a German manufacturing firm, and the licensing payments had been quietly stacking up in an account neither of them knew existed. Let them have the truck. Let them have the house. I was about to find out what real freedom cost, and it turned out the price was exactly everything I'd already lost. The flight to Lisbon left out of Toronto 11 hours later. I don't remember much of it, that bone-deep exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from finally setting something down you'd been carrying so long you forgot it had weight. When the wheels touched down and I stepped out into that warm Atlantic air, something in my shoulders let go that had been clenched since roughly 2019. I rented a small place in Alfama, up the stone steps, white walls, blue tile in the kitchen. I didn't unpack for 2 days. I just sat on the terrace with a glass of cheap, good local wine, watching the light change over the river, listening to a woman 2 balconies down practicing fado in the evenings, that mournful, beautiful sound. For about 4 months my phone stayed quiet. I built a new rhythm, market in the mornings, a long walk, an afternoon working with the German engineers over video calls about the European rollout of the patent, evenings on the terrace. I took a cooking class. I started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Then Margaret found my new number. It came through as a text first, 6 weeks before the wedding. "Walter, we need to talk about Brielle's wedding. I assume you'll want to contribute something appropriate given everything you have." I didn't answer. 3 days later, another text. "I know about the German contract. People talk, Walter. Don't pretend you're broke." I still didn't answer. But I started paying closer attention, because something in my gut told me this wasn't over, and a man who spent his life reading pressure gauges learns to trust that feeling. The wedding invitation arrived by courier a month later, actual courier, to my apartment in Lisbon, which meant someone had gone to real effort to find me. Embossed cardstock, gold foil. "Brielle and Roland request the honor of your presence." At the bottom, in Margaret's looping handwriting, a note, "We'd love for you to walk her down the aisle, Walter. After everything, I think it's the right thing to do. For her sake." I sat with that invitation for 3 days. Part of me wanted to burn it on the terrace and never think about Halifax again. But there's a stubborn streak in me, the same one that made me finish every job I ever started even when the client was a nightmare and the margin was gone. I wanted to see this through to the end. I wanted to look at it with my own eyes. I flew back 2 days before the wedding. I didn't tell anyone I was coming until the morning of, when I texted Brielle. "I'll be there. Mac." The wedding was at a winery out past Wolfville in the Annapolis Valley, the kind of venue that runs you $40,000 before the open bar even starts. I stood near the back in a gray suit that fit better than anything I'd owned during the marriage, and I watched Roland for the first time in the flesh. Tall, tanned in a way that doesn't happen naturally in Nova Scotia in June, wearing a watch that cost more than my truck. He had the particular smile of a man who has never once doubted that the room belongs to him. I didn't walk Brielle down the aisle. She didn't ask again after my flight got delayed by exactly 4 hours, long enough to miss the ceremony and arrive for the reception. That part wasn't an accident. The reception was the kind of excess that makes you a little sick to your stomach when you know what real work costs. A 6-piece string section, an oyster bar flown in from PEI on top of the local stuff, just for the look of it. Roland stood up at one point during dinner, glass raised, and made a long toast about vision, about building something from nothing, about how Brielle had finally found a family that understood ambition. That's when an older man near the head table stood up. I found out later he was Roland's former business partner, a quiet fellow named Desmond Fitch, who'd flown in from Calgary and clearly hadn't been properly briefed on what not to say in front of 300 guests holding champagne. "Funny," he said, swirling his glass, voice carrying across the whole tent. "Last I checked, Roland built that real estate fund from nothing by using $40,000 of my nothing and 2 other investors' nothing, none of which any of us have seen back yet. But sure, to vision." The tent went dead silent except for the string quartet still sawing away, oblivious. Margaret's face went the color of the tablecloth. Roland's jaw worked like he was chewing on something. I stood at the back with a club soda in my hand and didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I left before the cake was cut. I caught a 9 p.m. flight back out of Halifax Stanfield, the wedding still unraveling somewhere behind me, and slept most of the way to Lisbon, that same bone-deep exhaustion. My phone rang at 2:15 in the morning 3 days later. Halifax time, that would have been about 10:30 at night. Margaret never did understand time zones, or maybe she just didn't care. I almost let it go to voicemail, almost. "Walter." Her voice was wrecked, raw, the particular sound of someone who has been crying for hours and has nothing left underneath it but panic. "Walter, please, you have to listen to me." I sat up in bed, pulled the duvet around my shoulders against the cool night air. "I'm listening. It's Roland, the fund, it wasn't real, Walter. None of it was real. The RCMP came to the house tonight. They're calling it a Ponzi scheme. Fraud. I don't even understand all of it. They froze every account. They froze the house, Walter. The house is in both our names from the equity loan he took out. They're saying I might lose it too." Her voice cracked. "Brielle is. She's a mess, Walter. They're talking about her as a person of interest because she co-signed something for him, some company paperwork. I don't even know what. They took her passport at the airport when she tried to fly out this morning." I closed my eyes. Outside my window, the lights of Lisbon were doing their quiet, indifferent thing, same as always. "And Brielle?" I asked. "She's sitting on the bathroom floor, Walter. She won't talk to me. They're saying she could be charged, that she's liable for some of the debts because of the paperwork she signed. She doesn't have that kind of money. You have to help her, Walter. She's your daughter. She's an adult, Margaret," I said. "She wanted a man who built things from nothing. This is what that looks like when it's fake. Don't be cruel, not now, please." A ragged breath. I could hear wind on her end, like she was standing outside. "Walter, listen, I made mistakes. I know that. But 39 years is 39 years. That doesn't just disappear because of one bad decision. I know you. I know your heart. You're a fixer. You always have been. I'm asking you to fix this. I know about the patent money. I know it's substantial. This could fix everything, the lawyers, the house, all of it." I gripped the phone a little tighter. The nerve of it was almost something to admire if it weren't so exhausting. "We're not us anymore, Margaret," I said. "We haven't been for a long time. But I'll come to Portugal," she said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. "I'll sign whatever you want signed. We can start fresh, just the 2 of us, the way it used to be before any of this. Tell me you'd at least consider it." I let the silence stretch. I checked the clock. 2:22 now. She'd been talking for 7 minutes, working her way toward a number the way she always did when she wanted something. "Margaret," I said finally, "you have a phone. That's good. You're going to need it. The person you should be calling right now isn't me. It's Legal Aid Nova Scotia. They have an after-hours line for exactly this kind of situation. Legal aid is for people who can't afford." "I know what it's for," I said. And then I did the kindest thing I had left to give her. I hung up. Not slammed, not dramatic. Just pressed the red circle and let the line go quiet. I lay back down. I thought about Brielle on a bathroom floor somewhere in a house I used to pay the mortgage on. I felt something for that, real and sharp. But pity isn't the same thing as obligation, and I'd spent 39 years confusing the two. I flew back to Halifax once more, 4 days later, for one reason only, to close out the storage unit where the last of my old tools sat, the final loose thread from my old life. I was rolling my one suitcase through the arrivals area at Stanfield when someone blocked my path near the Tim Hortons kiosk. Brielle and her husband, They looked nothing like the couple who'd sneered at my gray suit 11 days earlier. Roland was in a wrinkled dress shirt, no jacket, unshaven, looking like a man who hadn't slept properly in a week. Brielle's hair was pulled back, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. The look of someone who's just realized the floor they were standing on was never there. Mac, she threw herself at my arm before I'd even stopped walking. Please don't leave yet. We need to talk to you. I gently pulled her hands off my coat. I have a flight, Brielle. You don't understand, she said, tears starting immediately, the kind that come fast when someone's been holding them all day. We're so sorry. We were stupid, we were blind. Roland made promises that Roland tell him. Roland looked at the floor, then at me, something close to shame moving across his face, though I'd put money on it being mostly about the situation and not about me specifically. I'm sorry, sir. I really did mess this up badly. You didn't mess up, I said. You committed fraud. There's a difference and the RCMP agrees with me on that one. Brielle stepped between us, wiping her face, trying to find some composure. We know, Mac. We know how bad this looks. But we're family, we can figure this out together, right? But there's a problem. A big one. I checked my watch. I've got 40 minutes before my flight. What's the problem? She took a breath, placed a hand flat against her stomach in a gesture I'd seen before. In movies, on television, in places that weren't real life. I wasn't going to tell you like this, but I'm pregnant. I looked at her stomach. Flat as a countertop. Pregnant, I repeated. 8 weeks, she said, nodding fast. We just found that's part of why this all happened so fast, why we trusted Roland's deal so quickly. We were trying to build something for the baby's future. I pulled my arm gently away. So what do you need? The house, she said, rushing now, sensing an opening. The bank's going to seize it because of the equity loan tied to Roland's accounts. If you stepped in with the patent money, you could cover the lien, save the house. We could all live there. Me, Roland, the baby. The basement workshop still set up exactly the way you left it. I looked at the two of them. I looked at the departures board over their shoulders. I went into the place in my head where I used to go when a client wanted me to sign off on something that wasn't safe. Strip the emotion out, look at the numbers. Brielle, I said, you say you're 8 weeks along, yes. At the rehearsal dinner you had 3 glasses of Prosecco. I watched you do a shot with the bridesmaids on the dock before the ceremony. I kept my voice even. Either you're the most reckless expectant mother in Nova Scotia, or you're telling me what you think I want to hear, so I'll open my wallet. Her face went pale, mouth opening with nothing coming out. Let's say it's true anyway, I went on. The house was appraised at $540,000. Your mother and Roland pulled out $310 in an equity line, and that money's gone. It's evidence in a fraud case now, not coming back. If I buy that house back, I'm not buying an asset. I'm buying somebody else's debt at retail price. Why would I do that? It's sentimental, she said weakly. It's our home. Sentimental doesn't cover a mortgage payment, I said. And it doesn't undo bad decisions. I looked at Roland. You want a house? Get a job. Start where I started, in a rented room, with nothing but a toolbox and a bus pass. We can't get approved for anything, Brielle said. The desperation breaking through now, the performance slipping. Our credits destroyed because of the investigation. We have nothing for a deposit. Then you go to a shelter, I said. A shelter, she said, like I'd suggested something obscene, like homeless people? Yes, I said. Same as a lot of people facing reality for the first time. You have millions, she said, voice rising. All the performance gone now, just raw anger underneath it. You're sitting on it while your own family falls apart. You could fix all of this with one signature, and you're choosing not to. I'm not hoarding it, I said. I'm protecting it. From people who think tears are a form of currency. I picked up the handle of my suitcase. If there really is a baby, I said, quieter now. I hope to God that child grows up with parents who understand that lying and asking for money isn't a career. Because right now, that's the only inheritance you're offering. I walked toward security. Behind me I heard Roland say something low, and Brielle start crying again. Louder this time, the kind meant to be heard by strangers in the terminal. I didn't turn around. The flight back to Lisbon felt shorter than the one out. I slept through most of it. That good kind of tired. The kind that comes after you've finally set something down for the last time. It's been 5 months now. Margaret is renting a 1-bedroom in Dartmouth, working the floor at a Sobeys to cover what's left after the legal fees. Roland's case is moving slowly through the courts. Fraud over 5,000, multiple counts, the kind of charge that comes with real federal prison time in this country, not the slap on the wrist people sometimes assume. Brielle and Roland separated 2 months after the airport. And last I heard through an old neighbor, she's living back with a friend, working retail, taking the bus. I sit on my terrace most evenings now with a glass of decent Alentejo red, watching the light come down over the river, listening to that Fido singer 2 balconies over who's gotten quite good actually over the past several months. I'm building a small greenhouse off the back of the apartment for tomatoes, which is a ridiculous thing for a pipe fitter to care about, and I care about it anyway. I'm not lonely. I want to be clear about that, because people assume an old man drinking wine alone on a balcony in another country must be lonely, and they're wrong. Loneliness was sitting at a dinner table with people who were quietly calculating what I'd be worth to them once I was gone. Loneliness was a marriage where every kindness got weighed and found insufficient. What I have now isn't loneliness, it's just quiet. There's a difference, and it took me 68 years to learn it. I built things for 40 years and never once asked what they were worth to the people standing in them. I'm done doing that now. The lights are on, the books are balanced, and the view from this balcony is mine, paid for in full, owed to no one.